Welcome back to our channel. Today, we explore the incredible and complicated story of Sheriff Buford Pusser, a man whose relentless battle against crime and corruption in rural Tennessee earned him a reputation as both a local hero and a larger-than-life figure. Yet, behind his courage and determination lies a story full of triumphs, heartbreaking tragedies, and questions that still remain unanswered. At just 36 years old, his life was tragically cut short in a mysterious car crash, leaving many to wonder what truly happened. In this video, we'll take you through his rise to fame, the controversies that surrounded his career, and the untold details of his untimely death. Join us as we delve into the life of Sheriff Buford Pusser, a man whose legacy continues to captivate and spark debate to this day. Buford Pusser was born on December 12, 1937, in the small town of Finger, located in McNairy County, Tennessee. Raised in a rural setting, his early years were shaped by the influence of his father, Carl Pusser, who served as the police chief of Adamsville. Growing up under his father's watchful eye, Buford developed a deep respect for law and order, and it was clear from a young age that he was destined for a life of service. His father's role not only instilled in him a sense of justice, but it also laid the foundation for his future, where Buford would eventually take up the mantle of law enforcement. From a young age, Buford stood out not only because of his physical attributes, but also for his strong work ethic. By the time he entered high school, he had grown into an imposing figure, standing well over 6 feet 6 inches tall. This natural physicality made him a dominant force in sports. Whether it was basketball or football, Buford's athletic abilities were undeniable. On the court and field, he excelled, drawing admiration from teammates and coaches alike for his strength, precision, and determination. These achievements in high school sports would become the first testament to his grit and discipline, qualities that would later define his career. While Buford was undoubtedly a talented athlete, his dreams extended beyond the local playing fields. Like many young men at the time, he felt a calling to serve his country. With the same sense of duty that had been instilled in him by his father, Buford enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, eager to take on the challenges of military life. He saw it as a way to contribute to something greater than himself, to fight for his country, and to build on the foundation of discipline that had been cultivated throughout his upbringing. However, fate had other plans for him. Despite his eagerness to serve, Buford's aspirations were dashed when he was diagnosed with asthma, a condition that prevented him from completing his training. This setback, while disheartening, didn't diminish his drive. Instead, it marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life. In 1957, rather than allowing this challenge to define him, Buford left Tennessee and headed to Chicago, where he pursued an entirely unexpected career in professional wrestling. Although wrestling was a far cry from his military ambitions, Buford quickly found success in this new endeavor. His imposing size and raw strength caught the attention of promoters, and he was soon wrestling under the name Buford the Bull. The nickname fit him perfectly. His larger-than-life persona made him an instant favorite with fans. One of his most memorable and daring matches involved a grizzly bear. Yes, a grizzly bear, which Buford faced and defeated in the ring. The spectacle became one of the most talked-about events in his wrestling career and only cemented his reputation as someone who wasn't afraid of a challenge, no matter how daunting. Though his wrestling career was flourishing, Buford still felt a tug toward his roots in Tennessee. The values of duty, justice, and service that had been instilled in him by his father and his community never left him. Deep down, he knew that his true calling lay not in the spotlight of professional wrestling, but in serving his community as his father had before him. This realization would soon lead him back to Adamsville, where Buford would trade in the wrestling ring for the badge of law enforcement. The seeds for his future in law enforcement had been planted in his youth, and it was time for him to step into the role that would ultimately define his life and legacy. Thus, despite the unexpected detours his life had taken, Buford Pusser's path had always been leading him back to a life of service. His early years, shaped by his father's influence, his athletic prowess, and his determination to serve, set the stage for the man who would rise to become one of the most legendary sheriffs in Tennessee's history. In 1957, Buford Pusser's journey took a dramatic turn when he left his hometown of Adamsville for the bustling city of Chicago. It was there that he entered the world of professional wrestling, a career that would not only showcase his incredible physicality, but also cement his status as a larger-than-life figure. Known for his towering height and strength, Buford quickly became a favorite among fans, adopting the ring name Buford the Bull. His physicality, combined with his natural charisma, made him a force to be reckoned with in the ring. One of the most unforgettable events in his wrestling career was his infamous match against a grizzly bear. Yes, Buford went head-to-head with a wild animal in the ring, a spectacle that captivated audiences across the country. The match became a defining moment in his career, further solidifying his reputation as a man who was unafraid of any challenge, no matter how daunting. This victory against the grizzly bear would be the stuff of legend, a true testament to his larger-than-life persona. His success in wrestling brought him fame and recognition, but as time went on, Buford began to feel a shift in his heart, a pull back to his roots, to a life of service and duty. Despite the fame and recognition that wrestling brought him, Buford couldn't ignore the deep sense of duty he felt toward his community. After several successful years in the wrestling world, he began to feel that something was missing. While he was admired as a powerful figure in the ring, he couldn't shake the desire to serve a higher purpose. The lessons learned from his father, Carl Pusser, who had been a respected police chief, had always lingered in the back of his mind. Buford realized that the values of justice and community service, instilled in him from an early age, were calling him back to Tennessee. By 1962, Buford made the life-altering decision to leave the wrestling circuit behind and return to Adamsville. The spotlight of the wrestling world no longer held the same appeal for him. Instead, his heart was set on a new mission: to protect and serve his community. It was a calling that resonated with his core beliefs, and one that would shape the next phase of his life. The transition from wrestling to law enforcement marked a pivotal moment in Buford's journey, as he traded in his wrestling boots for the badge of a lawman. Returning to Adamsville, Buford's decision to join law enforcement was more than just a career change. It was a profound shift in his life's purpose. The skills he had honed in the wrestling ring, strength, discipline, and resilience, would serve him well in his new role as a protector of the community. He understood that the same determination that had propelled him to success in wrestling would now drive him to confront the rampant crime and corruption plaguing McNairy County. Buford's commitment to justice and his unwavering resolve to make a difference would soon set him apart from other lawmen. His return to Adamsville marked the beginning of his career in law enforcement and set the stage for Buford Pusser to rise to prominence as a sheriff like no other. It was a journey that would see him confront the most dangerous criminals in the region, all while facing constant danger and personal sacrifice. But more than just his physical strength, it was Buford's sense of duty and his unshakable belief in justice that would define his legacy as one of the most revered and respected sheriffs in Tennessee's history. In 1959, Buford Pusser's life took a significant step forward as he married Pauline Mullins, the woman who would become not only his wife, but his strongest ally. Their bond was built on mutual respect, love, and a shared sense of purpose. Pauline was more than just a supportive spouse. She was Buford's confidant, his emotional anchor, and a source of strength during some of the most challenging years of his life. The couple's partnership was a cornerstone of Buford's personal and professional life, and together they formed a tight-knit family unit that became the foundation of his journey. Soon after their marriage, Buford and Pauline welcomed their daughter, Dwana, completing their small but deeply connected family. Dwana's arrival brought even more joy into their lives and gave Buford an added sense of responsibility and motivation. As any father would, Buford was determined to provide a safe and stable life for his daughter, ensuring that she grew up in an environment free from the crime and corruption that plagued the community around them. The Pussers' home, though modest, was filled with love, creating a strong family dynamic that Buford carried with him into his career as a lawman. As the years passed, Buford's career in wrestling began to fade. While wrestling had brought him fame and recognition, it was never his true calling. Despite the success he found in the ring, Buford realized that his heart was not in the world of sports entertainment. His sense of duty and desire to serve his community remained a driving force in his life. Pauline, who had always understood and supported her husband's aspirations, encouraged Buford to follow his calling to law enforcement. It was a decision that would alter the course of their lives. The transition from professional wrestling to law enforcement was not just a career change for Buford, it was a complete shift in focus. While his wrestling days had been marked by physical strength and the thrill of competition, his new role would require him to face more profound challenges. The decision to join the ranks of law enforcement was driven by a deep sense of duty, a desire to protect his family and community, and the values instilled in him by his father. It was a natural progression for Buford, as he felt a calling to continue the work of his late father, Carl Pusser, who had served as the police chief of Adamsville. As Buford moved into his role as a lawman, he did so with the full support of his wife, Pauline. Their relationship grew even stronger as they faced the challenges of his new career together. Pauline stood by his side through the ups and downs of his work, offering encouragement and love as Buford took on the responsibility of confronting crime and corruption in McNairy County. Their partnership was a testament to the power of family and unity, and Pauline's unwavering support played a crucial role in helping Buford navigate the complexities of his demanding new career. In many ways, Buford's personal life supported his professional endeavors. His love for Pauline and Dwana gave him the strength to endure the trials that came with his new role as sheriff. The sacrifices that came with the job were not easy, but they were made easier by the foundation of love and support that Buford received from his family. This support system not only fueled his determination, but also helped him maintain his sense of purpose as he took on the criminals and corruption that plagued his beloved community. Buford Pusser's story, both as a man and a lawman, was inextricably linked to the love and dedication he shared with his family, making them an integral part of the legacy he would leave behind. Buford Pusser's entry into law enforcement was marked by a rapid and remarkable rise through the ranks. He began his career as a constable, a humble position that allowed him to get a first-hand look at the inner workings of the justice system. It didn't take long for Buford to demonstrate his natural leadership skills and fierce determination to make a difference. His rise was swift, and by 1964, at just 27 years old, Buford Pusser had achieved a milestone few in McNairy County could have predicted. He became the youngest sheriff in the history of the county. This achievement was not just a personal victory. It was a beacon of hope for a community that had long been struggling with crime and corruption. Upon becoming sheriff, Buford faced an uphill battle. McNairy County was rife with criminal activity, particularly from organized crime syndicates like the State Line Mob and the notorious Dixie Mafia. These criminal organizations had embedded themselves deeply within the local community, using fear, intimidation, and violence to maintain control over illegal operations like bootlegging, drug trafficking, and prostitution. They were powerful, ruthless, and seemingly untouchable. But Buford was undeterred. Buford's approach to law enforcement was unlike anything the community had ever seen. He didn't just enforce the law. He waged a relentless war against the criminal empires that had plagued McNairy County for years. He was a sheriff who led from the front, actively organizing daring raids to disrupt illegal activities. Buford's courage in the face of danger earned him the respect of his officers and the citizens who were sick of living under the shadow of crime. His focus was clear: dismantle the criminal organizations, bring their leaders to justice, and restore peace to his community. Buford's actions were bold and effective. He became known for targeting the very leaders of the criminal empires, organizing operations that broke up illegal gambling rings, destroyed drug operations, and sent a strong message to the underworld. His unyielding commitment to justice, his fearless nature, and his refusal to back down from a fight made him a force to be reckoned with. As his efforts gained momentum, Buford's name began to spread beyond the borders of McNairy County. Local newspapers hailed him as a hero, a man who was single-handedly taking on organized crime and winning. But his efforts didn't just make headlines in Tennessee. Soon, the media nationwide started covering his courageous crusade, solidifying Buford's status as a symbol of hope in a time when law and order seemed impossible to restore. As his reputation grew, so did his following. People began to see Buford as a modern-day folk hero, a man who had risen from humble beginnings to challenge some of the most dangerous criminals in the country. Fans from across the nation sent letters of admiration, praising his unshakable resolve and his dedication to the values of justice and integrity. These letters came from people who saw Buford not just as a sheriff, but as a beacon of hope, a reminder that one person's courage could make a difference in a world filled with corruption and fear. The media coverage of his courageous actions only added to his legend. Television programs, magazine articles, and radio broadcasts all featured stories of his daring raids, his fearlessness, and his unbreakable commitment to fighting for his community. The public's fascination with Buford's story grew with each passing day. He wasn't just the sheriff of McNairy County anymore. He had become a symbol of what it meant to stand up against overwhelming odds. People admired his strength, not just in terms of physical power, but in his moral conviction and his relentless pursuit of justice. Buford's rise to national hero status wasn't just about the arrests he made or the criminals he took down. It was about the impact he had on his community and the example he set for others. His bravery in the face of danger, his refusal to be intimidated by organized crime, and his unwavering commitment to doing what was right made him an iconic figure. To many, Buford Pusser was a living example of the power of one man's will to change the world. His name became synonymous with courage, and his actions continue to inspire those who believe in the power of justice to overcome even the most powerful adversaries. As Buford Pusser's fight against crime and corruption escalated, so did the risks he faced. His relentless efforts to dismantle criminal organizations in McNairy County made him a target for those whose power and profits were at stake. It wasn't long before Buford found himself the subject of multiple assassination attempts, orchestrated by individuals who feared the end of their criminal empires. Each attempt on his life was a reminder of the dangers that came with his decision to take on some of the most dangerous and ruthless organizations in the country. Despite the constant threat to his life, Buford remained unshaken. He continued his work with the same determination and fearlessness that had defined his approach from the beginning. The media quickly took notice of the attempts on his life, and the stories spread across local news outlets and national headlines. Each time he narrowly escaped death, the public's admiration for him grew. His bravery in the face of such grave danger only added to the legend of Buford Pusser. Far from being deterred by the threats, he pressed on, more determined than ever to rid his county of the criminal elements that had long held it in their grip. The media coverage of these attempts played a significant role in shaping the public's perception of Buford. Journalists and reporters painted him as a modern-day hero, a lawman who would stop at nothing to protect his community. His survival of these assassination attempts seemed to only bolster his reputation, with each close call fueling the narrative of a man who could not be easily intimidated or taken down. This portrayal resonated deeply with the people of McNairy County, who had long been living in fear of the criminal syndicates. To them, Buford was not just a sheriff, he was their protector, the one man standing between them and the forces of lawlessness. It was this image of Buford as a man who could not be bought or swayed that led to him being dubbed the Iron Sheriff. The nickname was fitting, reflecting not just his physical strength, but his unyielding resolve. Local news stations and television profiles highlighted his steadfastness and his ability to withstand the pressure from both the criminal underworld and those who would try to silence him. Buford's reputation as the Iron Sheriff spread far beyond McNairy County, and his story became a symbol of resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. In television segments and magazine profiles, Buford was often depicted as a sheriff who would not compromise, a man who would not allow corruption to take root in his community. His name became synonymous with integrity and unbreakable strength. He stood as a beacon of hope for those who had been oppressed by organized crime, showing them that one man's courage could stand against the might of powerful criminal forces. He was portrayed as someone who would never back down, no matter the cost. The public's fascination with Buford grew with each new attempt on his life, and each time he survived, his legend expanded. He became a symbol of justice in a world that often seemed devoid of it. The more his enemies tried to break him, the more resolute Buford became in his mission to cleanse his county of corruption. His rise as the Iron Sheriff was not just a title. It was a testament to his unwavering commitment to doing what was right, regardless of the personal cost. Through every bullet, every ambush, and every threat, Buford's resolve never faltered. In the eyes of the public, he was not just a sheriff, he was a hero who had come to embody the very principles of justice and courage. In 1967, a fateful night would forever change Buford Pusser's life and the course of McNairy County's history. Buford and his wife, Pauline, were ambushed as they drove down New Hope Road, a place they often traveled together. What started as a routine trip to investigate a disturbance quickly turned into a nightmare. As their car turned onto the road, a second vehicle pulled up alongside them, and in a burst of gunfire, everything changed. The attackers fired indiscriminately, leaving Pauline with fatal wounds and Buford critically injured. The horrific ambush not only shattered the Pusser family, but sent shockwaves through the entire community. Pauline, the woman who had been by Buford's side through every challenge, was gone. She had been his greatest supporter, his confidant, and his rock. The loss of his wife was a devastating blow, one that left Buford not only grieving, but feeling as though a part of himself had been ripped away. To the people of McNairy County, Pauline was more than just Buford's wife. She was a symbol of the strength and unity that had defined their fight against crime and corruption. Her death was a heartbreaking moment that left the community reeling, as the Pussers had become symbols of hope in a county plagued by violence and fear. The attack left Buford with multiple gunshot wounds, including to his face and jaw. The injuries were severe, requiring several surgeries and extensive medical treatments. Despite the pain, Buford remained determined to survive. His physical recovery was arduous, marked by days in the hospital and the excruciating process of reconstructive surgery. Yet, as much as the physical wounds took their toll, it was the emotional scars of losing his wife that would prove to be the hardest to heal. For weeks, the sheriff faced not only the trauma of his own recovery, but also the unbearable grief of losing the person who had been his constant companion in the fight for justice. As Buford struggled to recover, the media turned its attention to his situation. Stories spread across newspapers and television, painting a picture of a grieving yet unbroken man. The coverage focused not just on the tragedy, but also on Buford's indomitable spirit. The images of him recovering in the hospital, determined to overcome the physical and emotional devastation, only added to his growing legend. The media portrayed him as a hero who, despite losing everything, remained committed to his mission to rid McNairy County of crime. His resilience in the face of such personal loss became a defining aspect of his character, and the public saw him as a man who could not be broken by tragedy. In the wake of the attack, messages of support flooded in from across the country. Fans, supporters, and even strangers sent letters and telegrams expressing their condolences and admiration for Buford's bravery. Many saw him not just as a sheriff, but as a symbol of what it meant to fight for what was right, no matter the cost. His courage, even in the face of unimaginable personal loss, inspired countless people. One letter read, "Your bravery gives us all hope that justice can still prevail in this world." Another expressed, "You are a true hero, and we will stand with you as you continue your fight." For Buford, the outpouring of support was both humbling and bittersweet. While he appreciated the encouragement, it only served to remind him of the void left by Pauline's death. The community, too, mourned her loss deeply, holding vigils in her honor and reflecting on the strength she had shown in supporting Buford through every challenge. Despite the crushing weight of his grief, Buford was determined not to let his wife's death be in vain. He vowed to continue his fight for justice, not just for Pauline's memory, but for the people of McNairy County who relied on him. The public's reaction to the attack and Buford's resolve to push forward only deepened their respect for him. He became more than just a sheriff. He became a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, courage and determination can lead the way. The tragedy that befell the Pussers didn't break them. It only fueled Buford's resolve to honor his wife's memory and continue the fight they had both started. As he moved forward, the community rallied around him, united in their belief that justice, no matter how costly, was worth fighting for. In the aftermath of the ambush that left his wife Pauline dead and him critically injured, Buford Pusser was consumed with one goal: to bring those responsible to justice. He quickly identified Kerry McCord, Nick Jr., the notorious leader of the Dixie Mafia, as the mastermind behind the attack. McCord's criminal empire had long been a thorn in the side of law enforcement, and now, with Buford's personal loss, the sheriff was more determined than ever to bring him down. Buford's pursuit of the men behind the attack became a relentless hunt, fueled by both his need for justice and the desire to avenge his wife's death. As he tracked down those he believed were responsible, the situation escalated. Several gang members who were linked to the attack met violent ends in Tennessee and beyond. Some were killed in gunfights, while others were found dead under mysterious circumstances in Texas. While these deaths may have seemed like natural consequences of the violent world in which they lived, there were whispers that Buford's personal vendetta had crossed the line. His actions were no longer just about enforcing the law. They had become deeply personal. The media and public were quick to pick up on the wave of retaliation that followed Buford's hunt for justice. As the bodies of those connected to the attack piled up, many began to question whether Buford had truly been acting in the name of law and order, or if his actions had blurred the lines between justice and revenge. On one hand, Buford was seen as a grieving husband, seeking retribution for the murder of his wife. On the other hand, the violent deaths of these individuals raised moral questions about whether Buford had overstepped his role as a lawman. Did his actions reflect the righteous indignation of a man who had lost everything? Or had he crossed an ethical boundary in his pursuit of retribution? The debate raged on, with some people viewing Buford's actions as a necessary evil, while others saw him as a man who had abandoned the very principles of justice he had sworn to uphold. Local newspapers and national media outlets weighed in, some supporting him as a heroic figure who had been forced to take extreme measures in the face of overwhelming tragedy, while others expressed concern over the violence that seemed to be perpetuated in his name. For Buford, however, the line between justice and revenge was not as clear-cut as the public or the media made it seem. He had dedicated his life to fighting corruption and crime, and in his mind, the murder of his wife was an act that had to be avenged. His sense of duty, combined with the deep pain of his loss, drove him to make decisions that many would consider extreme, but to him, they were justified. He was not just fighting for himself, but for the memory of Pauline and for the community that depended on him. The controversy surrounding Buford's actions only added to the complexity of his legacy. Was he a hero? Or had he become a man consumed by revenge? The public's divided opinions reflected the broader moral dilemma that often accompanies figures like Buford, whose determination to right wrongs can sometimes lead to actions that challenge traditional ideas of justice. Regardless of the controversy, Buford's pursuit of justice, whether seen as righteous or revenge-driven, was undeniably effective. His hunt for those responsible for his wife's death would leave an indelible mark on McNairy County and the public's perception of him as a sheriff willing to go to any lengths to seek justice, even when that justice became entangled with his personal grief and vengeance. In the years following the tragic death of his wife, Pauline, and the relentless pursuit of those responsible for the attack, Sheriff Buford Pusser's life would take yet another unexpected and controversial turn. In 1974, publisher Barbara Bivin published a series of explosive allegations against Buford, claims that would cast a dark shadow over his legacy. According to Bivin, Buford wasn't just a sheriff fighting for justice. He was allegedly involved in illegal activities, including drug trafficking and even orchestrating the murder of his own wife, Pauline. Bivin's accusations sent shockwaves through the public, challenging everything people thought they knew about Buford. These claims were not only shocking but deeply personal, as they suggested that Buford, the very man who had been seen as a symbol of justice, might have been involved in the very corruption he had spent his career fighting. The idea that he could be responsible for the death of the woman he loved was not just a betrayal to his community, but a devastating blow to those who had stood by him in his battle against crime. The allegations seemed too unfathomable for many to accept, yet they sparked a frenzy in the media, which was eager to sensationalize every detail of the story. Despite the explosive nature of Bivin's claims, the FBI launched an investigation to determine the truth behind the allegations. Their investigation, however, found no evidence to support the accusations of drug trafficking or Pauline's murder being orchestrated by Buford. While the FBI's findings cleared him of the most serious charges, the damage had already been done. The allegations had stirred public doubt, and the controversy surrounding them began to overshadow Buford's earlier heroism. His legacy, once that of an unshakable figure of justice, was now in question. The controversy surrounding Buford didn't just challenge the public's perception of him, it also split opinions within his own community. Supporters of Buford, many of whom had witnessed his dedication to justice firsthand, rallied to his defense. Former colleagues, officers who had worked alongside him, and everyday citizens who had seen his sacrifices and commitment to their safety all spoke out in his favor. They insisted that Buford was a man of integrity, someone who had devoted his life to making McNairy County a safer place, and that the claims against him were nothing more than slander. To them, the allegations were not just unfounded. They were a betrayal of the man who had put everything on the line to protect his community. However, not everyone was convinced. The media played a major role in shaping the narrative, and the ongoing coverage of the allegations fueled public debate. Some media outlets sided with Bivin, giving weight to the accusations and questioning whether Buford's actions had been motivated by a desire for personal gain or revenge, rather than the pursuit of justice. Others pushed back, framing the allegations as nothing more than a desperate attempt to tarnish the reputation of a man who had already endured so much. This division created a complicated and polarized narrative around Buford's actions, casting doubt on his character even as he remained steadfast in his dedication to his job. The public sentiment became divided. While many saw the FBI's findings as a clear dismissal of the accusations, others couldn't shake the lingering questions. Did the media sensationalize the story for profit? Or was there more to Buford's story than met the eye? The ongoing media frenzy only added fuel to the fire, keeping the controversy alive and creating a more complicated and multifaceted image of Buford Pusser. In the end, while the allegations never resulted in formal charges or conviction, they added a layer of complexity to Buford's legacy. To some, he remained a hero, a man who fought tirelessly for justice, despite the personal cost. To others, the accusations cast a long shadow over his actions, forcing them to reconsider the true nature of his motivations. Whatever the truth, the media frenzy and public debate ensured that Buford's story would not be seen in black and white, but as one fraught with complexities, contradictions, and unanswered questions. The impact of Barbara Bevan's claims would forever alter the public's perception of Buford Pusser, making him a figure of both admiration and suspicion. In 1974, just when Buford Pusser's reputation was at its peak, his life came to a tragic and mysterious end. While returning home after what should have been an ordinary trip, Buford's car crashed under circumstances that have remained unclear to this day. The crash occurred on a stretch of road that seemed like any other, but the events surrounding it quickly sparked a flood of theories. Was it a simple, tragic accident, or was it something far more sinister? The questions surrounding Buford's death continue to fuel debates, with many believing foul play was involved, while others argue it was just a tragic case of human error. Eyewitness accounts of the crash only deepened the mystery. Several witnesses reported seeing Buford's car swerving erratically just moments before it careened off the road. Was the steering mechanism tampered with? Was it a mechanical failure or, as some suggested, an assassination attempt by those who had long been threatened by Buford's fight against organized crime? As Buford had made countless enemies in his war on the Dixie Mafia and other criminal organizations, many believed his death was no accident, but a carefully orchestrated act of retaliation. The possibility that Buford, a man who had made so many powerful enemies, could have been intentionally targeted seemed all too likely to many. Buford's daughter, Dwana, was among the most vocal in expressing her belief that her father had been deliberately targeted. She has always maintained that the crash was no random incident, but rather a planned attack, likely carried out by those who had been affected by Buford's relentless crusade against organized crime. Dwana's conviction in this belief was not just the result of the tragedy of losing her father, but also rooted in the knowledge of the enemies he had made over the years. To her, it seemed all too likely that Buford's death was a final act of vengeance by the criminal underworld he had spent years trying to dismantle. As the news of Buford's death spread, it wasn't just the Pusser family who was left searching for answers. The public's reaction was a mixture of shock, grief, and suspicion. Buford had been a beloved figure in McNairy County and beyond, and the thought that such a hero could die in such a mysterious way left many questioning what really happened. Media outlets quickly picked up on the story, sparking intense debate over whether it was an unfortunate accident or a deliberate, calculated attack. Some news reports framed the crash as a tragic end to a life that had been defined by bravery and service, while others dug deeper into the possibility that it was the culmination of Buford's fight against crime, a message sent by those who had long been threatened by his actions. In the wake of Buford's death, the media continued to cover the story extensively, providing a platform for both theories and speculation. The debate surrounding the circumstances of the crash became a national topic, with conflicting views about whether Buford's death was an inevitable consequence of his dangerous life as a sheriff, or whether it was a carefully planned and executed assassination. Journalists and television programs revisited his career and the enemies he had made, making it clear that Buford's legacy was not just about his heroic actions, but also the many controversies that surrounded his life and death. Despite the official conclusion that Buford's crash was simply a tragic accident, the unanswered questions lingered. The lack of concrete evidence that could either confirm or rule out foul play only fueled further speculation. Buford's death, much like his life, remained shrouded in mystery. For many, it seemed impossible that such a fearless and determined man could have simply died by chance. The belief that Buford had been targeted by his enemies, combined with the lack of closure surrounding his death, ensured that his story would remain one of intrigue and unresolved questions. The public's fascination with Buford Pusser only grew after his death, as his legacy was further complicated by the lingering doubts over the true cause of his fatal crash. In the years following Buford Pusser's untimely death, his legacy only grew, becoming a source of inspiration and reflection for people far beyond McNairy County. The community, still reeling from the tragic loss, came together to honor his memory. Vigils were held in his honor, with people from all walks of life paying tribute to the sheriff who had fought so hard to make their town a better place. The tributes were not just for a lawman, but for a man who had become a symbol of strength, courage, and unyielding determination in the face of overwhelming odds. The legacy of Buford Pusser was further cemented with the release of the film Walking Tall, which brought his story to the silver screen. The movie, which dramatized Buford's real-life battle against crime and corruption, helped introduce his story to a new generation. The film depicted Buford as the quintessential hero, a man who stood up against overwhelming adversity and refused to back down. For many, the portrayal of Buford in the film solidified his status as a modern-day folk hero, one whose courage was undeniable, even in the face of personal loss and immense danger. It became a cultural touchstone, reinforcing the narrative of a man who could not be broken, no matter the cost. Yet, even as his legacy was being immortalized in Hollywood, a debate continued to swirl around Buford's life and actions. Was he truly the hero the movie portrayed, or was he a more complex, flawed figure? To some, Buford's pursuit of justice, despite the personal toll it took, made him an admirable symbol of integrity and courage. To others, his methods, sometimes violent, often controversial, raised questions about whether he blurred the lines between law enforcement and vengeance. The debate over Buford's true character remains unresolved, with some viewing him as a flawed hero, and others as a man who became ensnared in the very darkness he fought to destroy. Regardless of where people stand on the debate, Buford Pusser's life and death continue to provoke thought and discussion. His story, marked by personal sacrifice, bravery, and tragedy, remains one of intrigue. For some, he will always be the hero who stood tall in the face of corruption and violence, while for others, he is a cautionary tale of how even the most well-intentioned individuals can be drawn into moral ambiguity. But one thing remains clear: Buford Pusser's legacy is far from simple. It is a legacy that transcends the boundaries of heroism and villainy, one that continues to inspire and challenge those who hear his story. In the end, Buford's life was as much about the questions he raised as the answers he provided. Whether seen as a hero, an anti-hero, or something in between, his story remains a testament to the complexity of human nature and the moral gray areas that define our greatest struggles. The mystery surrounding his death only adds another layer to his legacy, ensuring that Buford Pusser's name will never be forgotten, and his impact will continue to be felt for generations to come. His story is one of resilience, sacrifice, and a reminder of the difficult choices faced by those who stand up for justice, even when the cost is their own life.